If you're looking to light up your truck and take your experience to the next level, you're in the right place. Today, we'll be lighting up your spaceship. This is a custom LED setup, so you won't find it in stores, but I'll show you how to make your own plug-and-play kit so you can get that spaceship feel on your truck. We'll go through all the panels and light up the vents, the knobs down here, as well as the AC controls. And the cool thing about this, you can also expand it. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and check it out. For this project, these are some of the main items I'll be using. Some addressable LED strips, 2811 with the silicone sleeve. Your choice of controller, either a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. I'll be using a Wi-Fi controller on my Tahoe. To do all the connections, we will have to cut them and solder them, so solder and a soldering iron, some Tesa tape. To make it a plug-and-play setup, we'll need some extra wiring. From 18 gauge all the way to 22 is good, and the 3-pin indoor connectors. And I'll go ahead and link the items down below in the description if you wanted to check them out. For my Tahoe, I decided to get the Wi-Fi controller, but this one is a really good one as well with the Bluetooth. It's actually a little bit easier to connect to the Bluetooth controller versus the Wi-Fi, but I like the patterns on this one, and also it has more terminals so I can wire up more things or a little bit easier. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stick with this one, but this one's not a bad choice at all. The roll of LEDs is 5 meters, so we do have to cut them to the length that we need. I've already started cutting some of them, and you can just see the little marks right here by the terminal. So this line is cuttable. You can cut right here as well. Just don't cut anywhere by the chips or the LEDs themselves, it'll mess it up. And you can see that they are powered up by 3 terminals where you cut them. The top one, which is 12 volts, the middle one, which controls all the colors, the data wire, and on the bottom, the ground wire. For example, on this LED strip from the factory, it got joined, so you can see the soldering joints, and you can actually cut it right through half, and the LEDs will still function. If you cut anywhere on the left or right of this terminal, some of the LEDs may not light up, or you may have to just cut it all over again. Also, I've already taken it out of the silicone tube, depending on the strips that you purchase. And you can see on this one, I've added some double-sided tape on the back and here as well. From the factory, it doesn't have any, so just make sure to add some. You want to connect your LEDs to your controller with the arrows facing towards the right. If you put the arrow facing towards the controller, it's not going to work. So just make sure whenever you solder the connection that it'll be on the left side of the terminal and connect it to your controller. Something like this. It'll have the plug and play connector and it'll be just flowing towards the right. If you do it reverse, it just won't flow any of the LED colors and you'll have to resolder it into the correct orientation. You can see this one is facing back, so that wouldn't work into the controller. It has to come out towards the right. But what you can do, once you solder your input and connect it to your controller, this LED strip now gets outputs. If you solder them at the end, another wire, this will be an output to an LED strip. So this will get powered up. Instead of getting it connected straight to the controller, you'll be using this output of the LED strip. And that's just to save you a little bit of wire, or maybe you want to create a certain look or want to power up panels that are close to each other and don't want to run it straight to the controller. I'll probably just be doing them straight to the controller because most of them will be pretty short, and I'll also give it a little bit of a different look if they're all separate versus this, because this will be controlling the second strip. To solder my LEDs, I'm usually around at 385 degrees, but you could do it with a little bit of less heat or a little bit more. Just try not to spend too much time onto the LED so you don't burn it. And I am using a 6040 Rosen core. The tip on the solder is a little bit of a fine tip. It's not like too big. To get a good solid connection on your LED strips, it's a good idea to pre-tin them with some solder, both on the strip and the wiring. From the factory, this plug has a little bit of solder, but if you have to, you can add a little bit more. And some people like to add some flux to help them solder into the LED strip. So I'll do 2 different examples. On the left, I'll add some flux. On the right side, I'll have it bare with no flux. And this is the one that I'll be using for this example. Just a little bit of flux. There you can see the difference when you solder with flux versus no flux, and they both pretty much look the same, but it's really up to you. It sometimes may help out to use some flux, but you don't really have to use it. You can also use soldering irons that are not adjustable as long as the tip is a little bit thinner, or you can change it. For example, this one is a little bit wider, but it can be changed to a thinner tip. What I'll do on my controller is connect 10 plug and play connectors so that I can have my LEDs all individual, but I'll split it in half, 5 and 5, since I have dual terminals for each, 2 grounds, 2 12 volts, and 2 data wires. Even though one of them says clock and data, they're both the same thing. I already have them ready here on the side. I did them earlier, so they're all Tessa taped and split up. So the red wires are my 12 volts, my white wires are my ground wires, and the green is all data. I also added some heat shrink and soldered the tips so that the copper strands won't be flying around. And now I can just go ahead and screw them down and ready to go for my new LED strips. There's my first ground, my data wire. Okay, now I got 5 plug and play connectors on my controller, and you can see why I went ahead and chose this one, because now I have extra space to do more and it's not going to be too crowded. But if you're liking this content so far, don't forget to subscribe so you can see more like this. Alright, there's my other ground, my second data wire into the clock port, which will do the same as the first data port. Alright, and finally my last 12 volt wire into the VCC port. The controller is now ready for a plug and play setup on the LEDs, and it should look something like this without no copper strands sticking out, because you don't want to get no issues, and the Tessa tape just makes it a little bit secure. I also did add some double-sided tape in the back because I'm going to be putting it on a flat surface, and besides that, it just needs the 2 power connections, which should be pretty simple at the truck. I've started doing the wiring extensions for my LED so I can have it as a plug and play setup. I'm using the female terminals on both ends. The male sides are going to be on the controller and the LEDs themselves. That way it makes it easier and I don't get confused. But on one of the ends I do have a 1 terminal, and that's because this one is getting connected straight to the controller, and this one single wire will get split up to 2 connectors at the end, since I'll have 2 LED strips connected close to each other, but I do have separate terminals. Just in case anything goes wrong, I can separate them. And the wiring is just parallel, so the grounds get all together, the 2 data wires are together, and the 2 12 volts are together. It's just all soldered up. Nothing real special. Just make sure that they're all color coded and you don't mix them up. You can essentially make your extensions in whatever way works best for you. For example, here I'm gonna have this one connected to the controller with 1 plug, but it also splits off into 2 longer RGB wires because my LEDs are gonna be further out, but they still have their plug and play connectors at the end. And it also depends on the wire that you're using. Here on the left I have a 18 gauge, so with this one maybe I can do like shared connectors because it has more copper. But if I am using maybe like this on the right side, a thinner gauge like a 18 or 22 gauge, I might want to do them separate so that I can get more current flowing to my LEDs. Right now I have about 7 extensions made, and the ones here on the left side are the ones for the interior. So if you're using about 20 or 22 gauge, it's okay. Even if you share the connectors, it's not a big deal because the runs are not too big. And I just have to Tessa tape them up, kind of like the ones on the right, to make them look a little bit better and clean them up. But these here on the right are much longer because they're going under my seats for the front and rear LEDs. So on this one, you do want to make sure you split up the connectors or use the heavier gauge wire like a 18 gauge. Like on mine's, I have them split off, but I have 1 connector at the controller, and that's okay because I am using the heavier gauge wire. So just, you know, make them to wherever it works out best for you, and you should be good to go. At the end of the day, these are just parallel connections going to the controller, so there's really no wrong way of doing it. You just want to make sure you have some solid connections, especially on your green data wires, because these will control all the colors onto your LEDs. And if they don't see like a good connection, you may have issues like glitching, or the colors may not be right on your LED strips. So I would recommend testing it all out before you go ahead and Tessa tape it, and that way you know that everything is functional and you won't have any issues. Right now I have a total of 7 extensions for all my LEDs, and they do have multiple connectors. The longer ones on the left are the ones for under the seat, and the smaller ones go on the dashboard. But if I need any extras, I'll just make some more. Our main focus is going to be the dashboard, so whenever you take your radio bezel off, just be careful. It's just being held on by some clips. You can usually just pull it off slightly, and then the shifter you want to have down, and it'll just come right out. Careful not to break it. It's already loose there. You can see all the clips on the panel, so just be careful not to break them off. If your steering wheel comes off, that can help out as well. With the bezel out of the way, we can now remove the driver's AC vent as well as the one by the radio. This one will come all together as a assembly, so just be careful. And it has some clips on the sides as well as on the bottom. If it gives you some trouble, you might have to loosen up this bottom part, which has 2 7mm, and it should slide right out. Once you have it loose, you'll have to unplug the connectors so that you can unscrew the AC vent. This bottom plug is the easier one. You can just press on it and it'll come off real easy. With this plug removed, you now have space to remove the AC vent, which is being held on by 3 Phillips screws. And if you want to take the whole assembly out, you'll have to unplug these little connectors, which helps out to use a pick because they're a little bit more deeper. But I'm just going to leave it like that and take off the screws to make it a little bit simpler. And there's your AC vent. Now that I have my driver's side AC vent, I just put the assembly back on since I'm daily driving my Tahoe. The vent by the radio is a little bit harder. It has a 7mm bolt on the side, but on the top there's another 7mm that's not visible by the dashboard. So I usually like to drill a small hole and take it off so I don't have to unbolt the whole dashboard cover. Just try to look underneath so you can see the bolt and center your hole. Now you can see the 7mm. Now you should just be able to wiggle it out. Alright, there it is. The vents on the passenger side are more easier to take off. You can usually just use a plastic pry tool on the sides and they'll come right out. So pretty easy right there. That's one. And that's two. Before I do anything to the vents, I'm just gonna clean them all up because they look a little bit dirty, especially from the inside. And on the driver's one, it looks a little bit faded, so I'll touch it up with a little bit of satin black paint. There's 4 7mm bolts on the corners holding the instrument cluster, so it's real easy to take it off. As you can see, I already went ahead and installed my Silverado's cluster in here, and I already removed the Escalade one that I had in there. It was a 99-02 since my Tahoe is a 2001. And if you're trying to do a swap to an Escalade cluster, it's really simple. It's a plug and play. Just try to stay within the same year. So 99-02 or 03-06. From the back, all you have to do is remove the one plug and play connector and the cluster will come right out. To light up the footwells on the front and rear of the truck, I'm cutting my strips at 12 inches. These are just the front ones. I still have to do the back ones, but they're all exactly the same size, 12 inch. And you can see on the bottom, there's a nice spot to mount them in this metal bar. I'll just have to clean it up with some alcohol and add some promoter to make sure they get a real good adhesion. I don't have a center console, so I'll put a strip right in the middle. You can see the bar runs through all the center, so it should be good in this area. On the driver's side, the lip is a little bit bigger. It's still 12 inches though. I have the manual seats, so for my rear LEDs, I'm gonna go ahead and mount them in this flat bar that's right across. So if yours are electric, it may be a little bit different. Some of them might have space on top, but in my Tahoe, I'm gonna go ahead and use this bar, just clean it up with some alcohol, and it should be a good spot to mount them. I have all the 3 LEDs in the front. You can't see them from the top, but if I go down here, you can see it. That's one. And I was able to zip tie the wiring on this brace. There was a nice spot, so that way it's not gonna be hanging. And I have the plug and play connector on this side. I also added a little bit of black paint because I could see it a little bit from the top. It's not too bad, but just you know, to make sure it blends in a little bit more. This was a real nice spot for the LEDs under the seat. I was able to add some zip ties on the left and the right side, so it was extra, so I could keep it more secure, and also real close to the connector. To pass the rear wiring on the LED strips, it's not too bad. You can follow the stock wiring. You can see that there's some right here, and if I lift up the carpet, it's going on top of the padding, so try not to go below it. That way it doesn't get lost and it's a little bit easier to pass. I already have it on this side. On the bottom of the seats, they'll come out by the AC vents where the carpet lifts up. So it's not too bad, just take your time and go on top of the foam of the carpet, not underneath. And you can just, you know, connect it to your plug and play connector of the LED. Also, don't forget to leave a little bit of wire slack so that the seat can move around and not pull the LEDs off. And you can just nicely tuck it on the bottom or zip tie it. I added a little bit of zip ties on the right side and also on my LED strips. From the top you can't see them, and right now my seat is actually forward, but it should be even more hidden once the seat is back. But there you can see the LED from far away. The rest of the extension is following the stock wiring through the panel and right behind the glove box. From here I'm gonna go up to the dashboard. To power up my controller, I'm using some 16 gauge wire, and I will be adding a fuse. This one has a 20 amp right now, but I'll be changing it out to a 10 amp. On the ground, I just added a ring terminal so I can use one of the factory bolts and I don't have to worry about drilling a hole. And you can see right here that the VCC wire is my red and black. My ground wire is just green. And the wires are not too long because I'll be connecting real close to the power source. Behind the cluster, there's a nice flat spot in the back wall where I'll be installing my controller. There's a better look now with the controller mounted and all my connectors are in the back. To ground the controller, I'm gonna use this factory bolt that I've already loosened up, and it's just on this factory metal brace. I also added a star washer to the factory bolt. That way it's nice and secure. And to power up my controller, what I like to do is hook it up to a parking light wire or dimmer. That way the lights will only be on at nighttime and not in the daytime, since I don't need them in the day. And I'll be tying into my factory dimmer switch. My Tahoe's a 01, so the dimmer wire is a dark green wire in pin K, and this will work on the 99 to 02 models. I already have my meter grounded at the column or a good metal surface, and my red probe is on the dark green wire, which should be the correct one. And when I turn on my parking lights, the meter should read around 12 volts, so 11.2, and if you adjust the brightness, it'll lower the voltage. So now we know that I have the correct wire and I can go ahead and solder it in place. For the best connection, you always want to do a military splice. And if possible, you can solder your connection. After I've added some tape over the solder, I like to add a zip tie just to make sure that this is not going to come apart. Let's go ahead and test out the controller to make sure it's working properly. Right now I have my footwell LEDs all connected on the controller, and I'll do the parking lights manually. And there it is, the lights are coming on. It looks pretty good even though it's daytime, so I already know they're going to be bright at night. And I can go ahead and dim them down with the factory switch or cut them off. So that's what I want right there. And also, if you don't want to use your factory switch, you can go ahead and wire up an aftermarket switch or an accessory and control the dimming through the controller on the app. To remove your AC controls, there's two 7mm bolts on the sides, or you may not have them. And there also is 4 tabs on the corners that you want to squeeze down, and the AC controls will come right out. On my Tahoe, I have the manual AC controls. On the back, it has 2 plugs, but if you have the automatic one, it might have only 1 plug. To open up the control panel, first we need to remove the AC knobs in the front. I loosened them up earlier with a plier, but usually they just slide right out. On the back of the controller, it has 4 bolts on the corners, so we'll have to remove those. And my model also has 2 holding on one of the connectors. And to remove them, I'll be using this 1/4 inch socket. You can see right there. They're not too tight, so you can just do it by hand. After the bolts are removed, you can slightly move this forward because there's going to be a harness inside holding on another circuit board, and you want to remove these two other bolts as well. Alright, now that's out the way. There's a lot of space in here so that we can put an LED strip going all around the panel, so it should light it up real nicely. And what I'll do is make a small hole on top so that I can pass the wire for my plug and play connector. As I was drilling the hole for my wiring, you can see that my panel just cracked on top, and that's because this is an older panel. This is from a 2001, so it's over 20 years old and it's pretty brittle. And you can see it's got a crack going right through the back of it, but it'll be fine. I can go ahead and fix it with some CA glue. Just be careful on yours so that you don't break it, and take your time. The AC control panel is almost ready, but you can see I added one long LED strip, so it'll be super bright. And I did remove the 4 factory halogen bulbs inside so it wouldn't look weird. In the front panel where the buttons go, I still have the halogen bulbs, but I'll go ahead and remove those and add probably 2 strips, since this back LED won't light up the front, and I'll just have to have them separately right there. But I'll be able to use the outputs from the top strip and jump them to the front, so I don't have to do no extra wiring. Alright, my AC control panel is now done. You can see that I added the output so that I can connect the new strips in the front of the board. But the strips, I ended up putting them on the bottom because there's some factory bolts that go attached to this panel, and I wouldn't be able to attach them since it's 3 LEDs on each circuit. So it should be pretty good because these buttons will still get lit up all the way from the bottom. On the broken part of my panel, I was able to fix it, and I added some hot glue as well to keep the wiring down, and the strips on the corner just in case the 3M fails. The LED strips won't be hanging down. You can't really see the CA glue since it's behind the circuit board, but it's all repaired now. And on the back side, I just have a plug and play connector with some foam tape, which is covering up the repair as well. If I have to, I can just find a different housing later on, which shouldn't be too hard. And now I can go ahead and put it back together. You want to make sure not to over tighten the bolts, and also make sure that the circuit board is sitting flush. My AC control panel is now complete. You can see that the wiring is nicely tucked in the back, so it's not getting in the way, as well as on the bottom. They're not sticking out, and everything is sitting nice and flush. On top, I did add some more foam tape to hide the wiring, and also so it won't get damaged. On the bottom AC control buttons, there are some foam pads that I had to remove. They get squeezed into the circuit board, but it was blocking some of the LED light, so now it looks much better. To remove the lens cover off the speedometer is very simple to do. It has some tabs on top and bottom, but usually if you press the bottom 2, it'll just come right out, right in this spot. And you can see it's already lifted, and that's pretty much all you have to do. There you can see it's got 4 tabs on top, but pressing the bottom is just gonna be much faster. I'll have to take off the needles off my cluster and also the inlay so that I can put the LED strip in the back. I'm just showing you how I'm gonna do it. I'm not saying this is the correct way to do it. Now I can try to take off this inlay off. It's coming off. I might be able to just pull it off with this clear piece attached to it now that it's off of the base right here. Alright, looks like it's coming off. Alright, finally it's out. These are different from the 03 to 06. That's why you can see all the pins, and it's attached to this piece. It looks a little bit burnt where the halogen bulbs used to be, but now I have the oxydo bulbs, but you can definitely see the little yellow area. And this little piece you can just take off. It's got the spring. Make sure not to lose it because that's for your odometer. And you can see the pin down there. And what I want to do is install an LED strip all around this area. I want this thing to be lit up, so I cut the strip to 41 inches, and I'm starting from this side, going all around. And I'll solder my connector last so that I can stick it in through here. I was going to drill a hole in the bottom, but I think this will be better. so I can just come off to the top by the factory plug. I already cleaned the area before with some alcohol and added the 3M tape on the back of the strip. And this one, I was able to remove the silicone tubing, but if yours has it built in, it's still okay. And I'm trying not to bend them at 90 degrees so that the LED circuit board doesn't get damaged. So just try to get it as close as you can. And you know, you don't want to damage your LEDs. On this one, I'm gonna kind of curve it down because the connector will be in this area as well, so I don't want it to get in the way. So I'm just kind of tucking it a little bit down and trying not to bend it too much. That should be good. All right, my strips are all in, and I also added some hot glue to keep all the terminals down and a little bit on the corners just to make sure, because I don't want it to fall off accidentally. But it's all looking pretty good. And now I'll go ahead and test it out with the SP105 just to make sure everything is working, because I don't want to, you know, open it twice. It looks like all the pixels are working on the strip, so that's good. And right now it's just on auto, so it's just doing like random colors, but I can select a single color or different patterns. I'm already working on the cluster, so I might as well just replace my needles to make it look a little bit different. The original ones are white with the dark blue at the bottom. They look nice for factory, but I think these look nicer with the silver on the bottom and the light blue. But as you can see, I have two sets here. They look the same, but they're actually different. The bottom ones are 2000 or 99 to 02, and then the top ones are the 03 to 06. The only difference is on the back side. These right here will have a shorter bar, and on the 03 to 06 model, it's a little bit longer. So if you want to swap yours out, just make sure to order the correct ones. I was able to find the needles in Amazon for the 03 to 06, but on the 99 to 02, I couldn't find them, so I did get mine from eBay. Even though that I do prefer using Amazon because they're better with customer service and returns. If I do get the link for them, I'll also have them down below in the description for you guys. I'm ready to put the cluster back together, so I'll go ahead and install the bar first with the spring attached. That way I can adjust my mileage. It does go before the faceplate. That looks good. And on the bottom as well. I also did remove the painter's tape that I had laid on earlier. It really won't be needed. It's actually easier to adjust it when you're on the truck and turning it on. So I'll just go ahead and do that. All right, so there's ignition, and I can see that the lighting is working in the back, so that's good. I'll go ahead and do the speedometer and my RPMs first, since I know they have to be at the lowest settings where these little resting bars are at. And make sure not to press it too hard, because if not, it's gonna stick and then your speedometer won't be accurate. But you'll probably be able to notice it if you test it out. All right, and I'll go ahead and test it out. All right, the RPMs are moving. And now I'll do the oil. So it should be under the bottom line right here. All right, that looks good. And it looks like it's good, because my oil pressure is actually not all the way to 40. Sometimes, I don't know why, or something is wrong with it, but I have to check it out later. If I step on the gas, it goes up, so that's good. Now I'll do my trans temp. All right, that looks good right there. Let's go ahead and try it out. And now I'll do probably the battery. It goes a little bit below the 9. Probably like around there. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. It's a little bit over 14 since I do have the high output alternator. So I already know that's more like a 14.4 or 14.9, pretty close. So that's good. If I turn it off, you can see it goes down to the 9. On my fuel gauge, I had it around this mark. I'll put it like that for now, but I'm gonna go ahead and fill it up with gas just to make sure that it's good. And this should be fine for, you know, while I'm driving it right now and testing it out. I mean, it looks okay, but I do want it to be accurate, so I'll go ahead and fill it up with gas later and then drive around, make sure it's all good. It's already at operating temperature, so I'm gonna go ahead and install the needle. But later, when it's off and all cool, I'm gonna check it up again. Usually it's around 1 bar below the 210, so like right around here. There you can see it a little bit better. So it's usually around this area. After a while of adjusting my needles, I finally got them where I think they're good. You can see that these are all the little places. I have the RPM resting at the bar, as well as the miles per hour, the oil and temperature sensor. And they move when the truck is off, so you can see they just fell down. But if I do the ignition, they'll go back into the right spot. So now the temp is at the line, the oil, my fuel, because I filled it up, you can see I only drove it like 20 miles. My battery voltage right underneath the 14. And the RPMs and speed, they actually moved over to the line. If I turn it off, you'll see right here they move a little bit. So when you start it or do ignition, they move a little bit up, as well as the trans temp. I'll turn it off right here. So my oil pressure just went up, but something's still wrong with the truck, because whenever it gets to operating temperature, it'll drop back down to probably half of that. And I have to check it out later on. Let me know what you guys think. I've already changed out like the oil pressure sensor and some other things, but I think it's actually the sending unit. Now I can go ahead and put on my cover and move on to the rest of the lighting. To make it look better, I'll remove all these panels, the traction button, my fog light switch, and the dimmer, so I can go ahead and install the LED strips inside. And with the pry tool, it makes it pretty simple to come off, or you can remove the whole housing. This one has 2 tabs, one on the left and right. And it comes right out with that single harness in the back. It's got that 1 tab. The dimmer switch is even easier to come off. And that same harness again. Just whenever you unplug it, your dome lights might stay on, so just make sure not to drain your battery, or you can disconnect it while you're working on this. This bottom switch is the one that's a little bit harder to come off, but you can see it's got a tab, so you got to lift it up, as well as on the bottom, and it'll slide right out as well. I got the fog light switch out. You can see the tab on top and bottom where it's being held on, and I already unplugged the 1 plug and play connector, and now I can go ahead and open them all up. To open the traction control button, it has 3 tabs on each side for a total of 6. And it's a bit tricky to open it up. You might have to use several different little tools like flatheads or picks just to keep them in place, because whenever you start lifting it, it might try to close back up on you. There you can see it stayed open. But you gotta be careful whenever you do the other side, because it'll try to close back itself. Alright, got it right there. And there you can see it. This switch is a little bit different from the AC controls and the cluster. You can see it uses reflectors on the halogen bulb. So there's not a lot of space in here. What I'm thinking of doing is removing the solder joints from that bulb and taking it off. After that, I'm gonna go ahead and put this LED strip on the wall back here and bend it so that it can reflect off the factory reflector. Just be careful not to lose the red grommet in the wall. It's for your button so that this can still work on the traction. And also this circuit board does come off if you want to, but you don't really have to take it off. On my LED wiring, I'll make a small hole on the left side of the red dot so that I can pass through, and I'll just be careful not to crack this panel how I did on my AC controls. There it is, now it's complete, and I went ahead and angled that LED strip on the back wall and the circuit board, so it'll be reflecting off the original reflector. And I also covered up the hole that I made for my wiring with some hot glue, just to keep it down. On the back wall, you can also see I added some hot glue just to give it a little bit more strength. And now I can go ahead and put it back together. Just don't forget to not lose the red button that goes on this back wall, or the button won't press in right. So I'll just put it back in there. That's one side. And the other side. So they're all in now. And the button works. It lit up real nice. I actually didn't think it was gonna be that bright, but I'm glad it came out real good. To open up the fog light switch, it'll be similar. It has a total of 4 tabs, 2 on each side, and it should be a little bit easier to open up as well. I'm kind of pushing the back while I'm doing it. You can see it's already loose already. And mine looks a little bit different because I had already soldered a switch inside here for my power folding mirrors last time. So that one's staying back there, and we're gonna just try to light up this section. To light up this button, it's gonna be a little bit different. We'll have to remove the button first, and you wanna use a small flathead. This one's actually a little bit too big. You can see this one is much thinner and sharper, kind of like a needle, real close. And on top of the button, you'll see that it has a small tab right up here, and also in the bottom. If you turn it around, there's another one. So if you slide your flathead right under here and start kind of pulling it, it'll lift the tab, as well as on the bottom. Just be careful not to break those tabs. Mines are already loose, and you can slide it right out. You can kind of see it right there. Here's a closer look at the hooks. They're right in the middle on the right side and on the left. That one's much better. So just be careful whenever you're prying them. Try not to break them, because that's what's gonna hold on the button in place whenever you put it back together. There's the top view. This is how it looks from the front. The button it presses is on the right side, that red button, kind of like the other switch. And we're gonna be removing this halogen bulb so that the colors don't look kind of weird. If you want to, you could leave it in place. I'm just gonna take it off. So I'm gonna pull out the circuit board and remove it. You can wiggle them off sometimes, or it's easier if you can just solder it, because you don't want to break the glass as well. Let's see if I can pry it off. You can see it's already coming off. But of course, the best way would be to use a solder in the back and just like melt the points off. And there you can see it came out. I'll be using another 3 LED strip, and what I'm thinking is to set it on that back wall real close to that red button. There you can see it a little bit better, and it's not complete yet because I'm gonna go ahead and add some hot glue on the bottom as well as on the top to make sure it's secure and it's not gonna come off. My fog light switch is now ready, and you can kind of see where I glued in that LED strip, and that single one will be lighting up the button, which should be better than the original one because it was in the far back wall to the side. This one is going to be directly on it, and on the back I just added a lot of hot glue to make sure that it wouldn't come off, and in case I yank on the wire, I don't want it to accidentally rip off there as well. Make sure to put the button back in the same orientation. On the left side it has the slit where the halogen bulb used to be, and on the right side it has a little tab that'll press on the button. Let's check out the dimmer switch. You want to open up the back of the dimmer switch slowly because it has some moving parts. And I grabbed this dimmer switch off my Yukon right now because the one from the Tahoe, they just kind of popped out of place, and I wanted to show you a little bit better. So once you pry this back piece open, there's another one that you'll have to pry off with the same tabs on the bottom and top, so it's 6 tabs. Once you have all the tabs loose, you want to lift this piece up straight and slowly. And there you can see this one has no moving parts, but they're all down here. So this is where you want to be careful because there's some springs that can pop out of place, as well as this metal piece, and this whole area just moves around. You can kind of see when I move up the knob. That's how they move. But this spring will just pop out of here. It's a long spring. And then the button right there just kind of pops out as well. This piece can fall out. It's a little clip. And there's another small spring that goes in there. I'll go ahead and kind of push it down. You can see where that one just pops out. But if you had already removed the knob out of here, there's another spring and a little ball that go in here. I'll kind of show you right here. First, I'll go ahead and remove the knob in the front. Usually you can just pull it off. If it's hard, you can use a plier. And to remove this front faceplate, it has 2 tabs on the left and 2 on the right. If the knob is off, this piece will come out. This piece right here comes off, and then you'll see there's a ball right in this section. If that ball comes off, there's also another spring right underneath. That's how it looks with the headlight in the off position. If I turn it on manually, you can see that bar moves all the way, and that's back off right there. So what I'm thinking is maybe adding an LED strip in this back wall, kind of like an L, and having the wire come out where the original bulb goes in. And I'm gonna see if that works out. If not, I'll do it a little bit different. Right now, the factory knob will light up from this little bar, and you can see from the front side that it's kind of blocked off. Only this section passes light through. But I'm thinking maybe later I want to upgrade that knob. So what I'll do is drill some holes around here so that I can get some more light to pass through. I put the cover back on, but you can see where I drilled the holes at just to make it a little bit bigger and get more light through later on. From the back, that's just how it looks. And now I'll go ahead and put that clear plastic back on there. I have my LED strip ready for the dimmer switch, and you can see it's using 6 chips on there. And I passed the plug and play connector first through the factory hole, since the connector is a little bit bigger, and that way it'll make it easier to install and I don't have to do 2 solder joints. I also added a little bit of hot glue just to keep the terminals down because I don't want them to pull off either. We'll start off with the switch right here. So it slides into this groove and it only goes in one way. If you have your wiring on the side, just make sure not to pinch them. It goes pretty far down. All right, so that's good. You can see it's real close to my wires, but once it's tucked in there, it should be fine. It shouldn't be moving around anymore. When I first opened it up, mine's just popped all out. So this is how you put them back together. There's a big spring with a little ball, and those go on this side with the big knob. First, you want to go ahead and do the bigger spring and throw it in this pocket, just like that. This little ball goes on top of it, like that. And then this long spring is pretty thin and long, goes into this button down here, just stays just like that, just hanging out there. There's a small groove right here where that ball rests. Just like that. And that's how it moves right there with the switch. Let me try to put that switch from the back. All right, I got me another glove because there's a lot of grease on this side, but I'm gonna go ahead and hold it in place so that I can install the knob and hold it from the back. That's the off position right there. And now this spring, this little spring is the one that goes into this hole right here. You can see it. And this tab just goes on top of it, into those 2 little holes right there. And that's it. Now just make sure they're not gonna move and put the other piece on top. That's looking good. And press it down. All right, now it's all locked into place. Let's go ahead and test them out, even though it's daytime, but I got it in the shade, so it should be good. There you can see the parking light, and traction is working, the fog light switch, and the dimmer. So they all look good, and I can cut them all off from here with the dimmer, or have them a little bit dimmed out, full brightness. And the fog light switch still works, so that's good. The traction still works. Before we complete the AC vents, let's not forget about the rear AC controls in the truck. And I'll go ahead and start back here. Mine's only has the rear AC and no heater. That's also why I only have one knob, as well as right in the front. So I'll go ahead and start here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and pry it open with a small flathead. You don't really need to take this whole housing off, only the controller itself. And you can just kind of grab it with this and pull it down. There it is. It's kind of weird how they have it in there, but it's just pressed, so you want to use a small flathead. And then you can just pull off the connector. On the front one, I'll remove the whole console. It'll make it a little bit easier so that I can pass the wiring for the back one. And this one is being held on by one Phillips screw in this hole and 2 clips in the front. Careful dropping the screw because it'll be loose right there. Now that's loose, and you can just kind of pull this and you'll see the 2 clips. All right, there it is. And you can just go ahead and unplug the wiring. I already ran mine earlier, so you can kind of see it right there, but I still have to finish Tessa taping it. You can go ahead and unplug the 2 connectors, one for your dome lights, and the second one is for your AC controls. Once you have it out, you can pry it from the back. You can see on the corners, they have 4 clips, the same as the rear AC. So just be careful, try not to break them. If you do break them, then you might have to put it back together and add some glue at the end so that it's not gonna fall off, because the tabs are very small and brittle. These look a little bit similar, but they're different from the inside. First, I'll take off the knobs. This one I already have loose, so I'll kind of show you right here. The front cover has 4 tabs holding it, 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top side. So you want to go ahead and pry them with the flathead again. Alright, there it is, and don't lose this little metal bracket for the AC knob. And this one I already have open as well. I just have it kind of loose. These are nice because they have a lot of space inside, so that means we can go ahead and put an LED strip going all around and light it up real good. The only difference that I noticed is that it has some little ports that are open right there, those 2, and then this one is open on this side. Besides that, I mean, they're pretty much the same. So what I'll do is run my wiring out through the open port so I don't have to drill anything and I don't have to take off the circuit board. On the halogen bulbs, I'll probably just wiggle them off because they're pretty easy to come off that way as well. So I'll take those off. That's one. There's another one. If you're pulling them, just be careful because the glass can break. That's the final look of my rear AC controls. I have the strip going all around, and it's not completely going all the way over here. I didn't want to overlap it. And also, mine only has 1 knob, so I really don't need that much light, and that'll be more than enough. The same on the other one. And they pretty much look the same except the connector holes, like I said earlier. You can see this one's going on this corner, and that one had some holes here, so I didn't have to drill into the circuit board. And now they're ready to go back on the truck. To light up my vents, I will install a LED strip inside. So first I'll have to drill a small hole on the side for the wiring. And what I like to do is install the wiring first before I solder it onto the LED, since I don't want to make it too big. That should be good. All my plug and play connectors are in the vents now, and I can go ahead and solder my LEDs. Just make sure to cut them to the correct length of your vent because some of them may be smaller or bigger. My vents are almost all complete, but you can see that I have all the LED strips going around the edges all the way to the top, and I have them sealed up with some silicone just to make sure that there's going to be no gaps, and it also helps the LED strip stay in place. You want to make sure that the LED strip is not going to fall off your vent, so using some promoter will help out the 3M tape adhere better to the silicone sleeve. You can see it just kind of falls off, so just make sure that the bottle is not expired. And besides that, you can use some hot glue on the sides or silicone. I also like to upgrade the foam that goes around the vents to this upgraded rubber version. You can see this foam one is just a little bit thinner and it kind of breaks off sometimes. So since I already have them all open, I just went ahead and changed them out, and my vents are now ready. Here's a better look at how I have the wiring coming out of the vents. This is the left driver's side. The right driver's side, they're pretty much inside on the interior. And for the passenger, I have them on the outer edges. So the left and right. And now I can go ahead and install them into the Tahoe. Alright guys, I got my dash all back together. And you can't tell that there's any LEDs in the AC vents or anywhere on the Tahoe. It looks just like factory, which is what you want. But if you look real hard all the way to the back, you can see it a little bit. It's just kind of blended in. Or if you turn on the lights, even though it's daytime. Let's go ahead and check out the app real quick. I'll do my parking lights. And there you can see the lights are on. So this one is the Wi-Fi version, and it uses the LED Shop app. So I'll open up that. And you want to connect with Wi-Fi first. The password is 1 through 8, and it'll be in the manual. Once you're connected on Wi-Fi, you can turn off the module or turn it on from the app. And on the bottom, it's going to ask you to select the pixels. I did a total of 400, and that worked out pretty good. On the left side, you can select the RGB colors. For example, if you press green and it turns blue, then you want to change it until you get the correct color. You can see down there, once I move it, it just kind of changes the color. Mine's worked out good on the top setting, and our LED strips are WS2811. So you want to leave it on there and press center. To make sure everything is working properly, select the colors. So there should be red, green, and blue. So that's right. And if you have on the wrong one, let's say down here, it'll just do a different color. There you can see it's green and blue, but they're on opposite colors. So that means that's wrong. Only the red is correct. So I'll go back here and change it to how I had it. And there you can see it's working normal. And now you can do it all correct from the app. Once you have all the settings correct, you can play with the app and it'll have multiple functions. So you can see them moving right there. You can select any color or make your own patterns. And on the bottom, they have different ones. And you can also heart them so that they can get saved. Like on the beginning of the video, this is the one that I had right there, kind of flowing. Except that it's daytime right now, so it looks a little bit lighter. On the bottom of the app, it has the dimmer. So you can control the brightness if you want to lower it or have it all the way up. And also the speed. So this would be the lowest speed. If you go all the way to the right, it'll speed up the LEDs and the pattern they're doing. So you can select it just however you like and customize it to your own liking. To give you a better idea of how bright the LEDs are in the interior with the headlights on, if you get closer to the windshield, you can see the seats right there. And I think it looks good. I actually have 70% on my windshield, so it's not just factory. On the side, I have 5%, but you can't really see it as much, just a little bit of glow. If I open up the door, you'll see how it looks way brighter. Or if I lower the window, kind of like if you had no tint, that's what it looks like right there. And again, this is with full brightness, or you could dim it down a little bit if you want to. Every time I do this, it feels like I'm driving two different trucks. A pirate ship by day with the wood grain wheel, and a spaceship by night with the LED vents. But remember, this is your ship. If you want to modify it, you can. This is just what I did on my truck. But let's say, for example, if you want to light up your speaker grills or maybe do a custom console, you can do that as well. If you guys like this content, don't forget to like, share the video, and I'll see you on the next upgrade here.